Здравствуйте, уважаемые участники форума и нашей экспертной дискуссии.
So we'll begin our expert discussion. So the subject matter of our discussion is the territories of accelerated growth. So this is the point of our discussion. So we need to identify the conditions and terms to launch those accelerated growth areas and implement successfully. So those territories, how to make them succeed and move faster. And I think that this is quite a tall order under the current conditions. And it's just to set up a site and wait for the investors. It won't work that way. And so when we start asking who those investors are, who would be tripping over themselves to come, because we are have lots of budget constraints and even reductions and limitations. And the Tomsk Oblast initiated this expert discussion, and the Tomsk Oblast is one of the areas that succeeds and is doing very well in this area. So development of the territories of accelerated growth actually, so then we have representatives of the federal authorities here, and so in their presence, we'll try to discuss the way the government sees the opportunities for the development of this instrument and how the regions and businesses would want to connect to get involved in the implementation of this approach. So we have three stages of our discussion. So first, we'll discuss the role of the zones for industrial economic policy of the Russian Federation. Second stage will be represented by regions will come out with their projects, suggestions, so the decisions that have been made and the first actions that have been successfully implemented. And so then large companies, so Rosatom, Seaborg, will come out with their proposals, and then we'll sum up the results. And certainly it's not the only discussion on the subject, but nevertheless we are making slow but steady progress. And at our Tomsk Oblast, so we are directly involved in setting up such sites of accelerated growth, because we always need to talk to match the benchmark and what the federal authorities think vis-a-vis our effort and the mechanism. That's why we have to always compare our notes. So then Ministry of Economic Development, Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Rosatom, so they are involved in these projects. So the monocities, so what's their role on the map of Russia? And so what changes need to be effected to get the ball rolling, so that the zones so will be properly developing. Do we need those zones? Do we need so some more instruments, or the existing instruments that have been created, and the priorities, legislative priorities, legal frameworks, what are the initiatives that support the development of the zones? So with your help, so they launched those zones of accelerated growth, and jointly with Rosatom, so they create those zones in closed, secured cities. And what do you think about this implementation? What do you think about building and developing these zones? So thank you for the discussion, because we've discussed it very actively in the last year and over the last year, and so launching this new mechanism to support mono cities, so one industry cities. And it's great. I welcome the opportunity to discuss these issues, because I can see the people in the conference room who participate in this effort personally. So then the constituents so they're trying, they compete among themselves to create best investment conditions to raise money and to set up those zones. And then And then the monocity, if you set up, it's not enough just to create a site and invite investments and investors, because the monocities, it's one industry city, and so always rely only on one industry, determines the well-being of the people, only one industry. And that is why so we had to create some exclusive conditions and terms in the cities which are far away located and very remote, and at the same time, so they're not attractive from the viewpoint of investments. And that's the reason why. So we needed to create favorable conditions. And so then those zones can be created only on the territory of the far east okrug, and then later in other territories. And then so they decided to expand this regime in the monocities and other areas as well. So then this mechanism became operational, and it's a fashionable word. It's come into vogue, and everyone wants to set up their own zones of accelerated development, and everyone are competing for that. But And so this, but certainly this instrument has been created to develop the territories of the Far East, and that's why exclusively paying attention to that area. So in accordance with the federal law, so those territories so maybe developed and originated in the monocities in the crisis situation. So there's the first line of crisis cities, one industry cities, and I'd like to inform that so there was a meeting at Mr. Shovalov's deputy minister, and we came to the conclusion that we have set up a system right now that instead of the motivation of creating new territories. So now that's every governor just wants to insert his city, his territory into the first crisis group of cities, because that will certainly a lot of support will follow. That's why they want just to get into that group, to get investments, to get support, and to get appropriations from the state. And that's why maybe it makes sense to reconsider, to revamp so this approach. And so now just we are considering another set of criteria. So we need just to remove the categories. So there's to remove this category one, second, third category, and just and arrange them differently. So depending on the prospects and how promising they are, and so to give a chance to all participate in this competition, and if they're in, so then the fund will support them and remove these additional obstacles, and everyone will be able to try to sign up for this, and if they win, they will be in for the support. So then so it provides for a lot of tax breaks. And then the reduction of social payments to the non-budgetary funds, and so that's why we need to be very careful how many of such sites need to be created, because the special investors regime that's created for the investors. So you cannot put it on mass production mode, because otherwise, so will not be getting the effect that and the drivers and the growth that we expect to get. At the same time, we should not expect the results anytime soon, because it takes time to sink in, to properly develop, and then eventually, so it will start to pay off, but not right now. And so we have set up 33 sites and 20 more applications, so awaiting their consideration at the Ministry of Economic Development, and everyone is waiting for the quick results, and everyone wants to organize one. And so that's an exclusive instrument. So it's a handmade, hand-picked instrument, and we need to realize that. And so they start to pay back. So 10 years after, so they've been set up. So then the Chinese investments, sometimes they set up so a new territory, and only 7 years after, so the first investors would come. And so that is why we know that so the break-even point will arrive 10 years after this territory, as an example, was organized. And so we're doing everything just to create those territories. Then there is a commission that was set up, inter-regional commission, how to select those territories. It's a two-stage approach, how to identify those territories where these territories can be organized. Ministry of Economic Development is deeply involved in that, and then there is a government commission there as well that helps. So this double filter allows us to use a fine comb to select the right candidates for the territories. And so now just we're trying to abandon this category system, one, two, three, and approach only on the basis of social economic indicators, and provide the status of the territory of accelerated development. And so it's all ready. And so now we have, so now we need to identify the authority who is going to do that. And thank you. And one of the speakers has not arrived yet. What's your name? So I'm filling in for him. Okay. And Angelica, so we have listened to the take on the issue of Ministry of Economic Development. So there have been some adjustments, changes, because we are in the middle of a crisis. And so it's not the categories that matter now, but it's but it's the
Закрытое административно-территориальное образование. Закрытый район.
And so depending on the economic situation. So nevertheless, we know that you are involved in the development of the instrument related to the prospective development of. So there's a new industrial park. It's a new and co-financing of regional programs of the industrial development. So it's another program that you're involved in. And so now just within those so territorial areas, so you developed a set of instruments, this kit of instruments to support them. And, so, yeah, because so now this word import substitution is not such a fashionable word like it was a year ago, and we're trying to avoid it, but we. So we certainly need to re-engineer so other technologies, other countries' technologies, and place them in Russia. So how do you see those territories? So can you coordinate the instruments that you are using or going to develop? How are you going just to coordinate them, and how you get to dovetail those instruments with the idea of this accelerated territorial development on the one, and what legislative initiatives so the Ministry of Trade thinks first? So the Department of Regional Policy, Angelica. So what we have in our portfolio? Let's talk about that. We launched two support measures of the state. So industrial park and technoparks administrative support system. In 2015, we launched the first stage of the mechanism of support to the constituent units of the Russian Federation to compensate for the costs of creation of parks and technoparks. So the state compensation for their setting up, and we do jointly with the two ministries. So then we consider the period of compensation. So 3.4 billion rubles have been earmarked for projects, and so this year the money will be put to use. And then concerning the territories and creating industrial parks. So we don't have any legislative restrictions. So we have the regulatory framework. It's all there. So the first park, as industrial park in Galas, Sakha, Yakutia, they came in with their application. So we're polishing it off, and so this year we'll get a license to develop this area. And I don't see any restrictions or limitations concerning any prevention of creation of industrial parks on the territories of accelerated development, because one is within the other. And but we I think that there will be no problems. Then concerning the management company support, so there is this special order so that we supported in 2015. So we supported 11 managing companies and provided money. 250 million has been earmarked, and so Kaluga managing company represents 4 parks. So about 15 industrial parks, techno parks, have already received financial support, and the credit portfolio is maintained at a level of 5-6 billion rubles. So we compensate the costs for the construction, the costs of construction. But who will be the main investor in those territories? Because we know that Kaluga Oblast has had a long history of successful operation with foreign investors. But I don't think that foreign investors will become the main trigger and the driver of the growth of such sites. And so who will be investing actually in these sites? Yeah. So our corporation is investing. State. So then state companies and large corporations and businesses invest, and so understand that the foreign investors that we have in Kaluga and Ulyanovsk, Kaluga it's still there. So then foreign investors are still here, and the ministry. So we design methods of motivation, stimulation, support of the constituent units of the Russian Federation, and to raise the investment attractiveness, and so we're working a lot to raise money and to invite foreign investors. So it's all on our website, and as you can see, so we're actively welcoming foreign investors to come and invest in those territories, and so development of technoparks, parks, and industrial clusters. So we provide to our foreign partners sites to raise investment and to localize their production. So we do everything on that plane. We'll talk about investors. Thank you for your comment. Then, so for example, Krasnoyarsk region, so then industrial park will be existing. So with the help of small medium businesses and Rosatom, so Karl Roberts will correct me if I'm wrong. So it's a company that supports and moving but the direct involvement is small medium businesses. Because it's not, so the managing company helps to develop infrastructure. I mean residents. So since the industrial parks is a specific thing about the small medium businesses, its components, etc. There's production of those things, and so then it's middle business should be there at least. But Komsomolsk and Amur and Khabarovsk. So the park will exist owing to the suppliers of the aircraft making plant, right? Yes, that's right. It's components that will be delivering manufacturing. So we have this. And so then part of the effort that we're going to deal with so they got some subsidies, and so we're planning to follow through on that. So we've done a lot of work and continue to work. So then so there'll be some questions to the Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Economic Development, and so let's go further. We'll come back to you later. So we can see that there are 3 key ministries that are directly involved in making every effort, so that So they are putting high stakes on these territories. Ministry of Economic Development, Ministry of Trade. So they are just so putting high stakes on the development of this, and so helping in every possible way. And so that, but we need just to coordinate this effort with the regions and with large state companies. And I'd like to give the floor to Sergei Anatolievich, who is who was the initiator of this expert discussion, and it would be good to get your take on the general range of issues that have been put under discussion. And so, how promising is it? What are the prospects, and your experience, if you would like to share? So, how you jointly with Rosatom implementing this program of creating this territory and restricted area Seversk. What needs doing in 2016 to fasten this project, accelerate this project? Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Alexander Vitalyevich, and I'm happy that you found time to come and discuss this important issue. Extremely important point before the launch of new programs of setting up those territories. But we need just to compare the time and to see whether we are on the same wavelength. And it's a huge mechanism. So let's just openly discuss what is a restricted area. So there are lots of definitions, but the big definition is it's a unique amalgamation. So on the one hand, so they're running unique technologies we have there that don't exist anywhere else in this restricted area. And then for many generations, the country, I mean, there's one country that is not there anymore, and the other country. So we have cultivated lots of engineers, researchers, so whose task is to create and to develop certain products for our country, specific products for our country. And the restricted areas, so they could dual responsibility. So first, those rather are two. So then restricted areas, some say that it's a massive headache because we need just to reduce the state financing, and so we need to find good people. We don't want to fire them, and so we need to keep them, maintain them, keep the talent. But we decided to look at it from different. It's not a headache. It's an opportunity that has not been made to develop new high-tech, state-of-the-art production. Because if we look at the restricted area as a headache, so this headache will turn into a massive permanent headache. But if we look at these restricted areas as an opportunity to create absolutely unique products that don't exist elsewhere, so that's where the uniqueness of Zato will definitely become more salient, and that's what we need. And the ministry is. I'd like to thank the Ministry of Economic Development and the Ministry of Trade for proper understanding of the issue. But but actually, government and the state doesn't understand that. And so we treat restricted areas as a means to address the issue of unemployment. For example, Seversk Zato, it's on the Guinness record book. So the biggest number of people living around inside the barbed wire fence. And so we're in the Guinness records book. 110,000 people. So this restricted area, 110,000. And so because they've been taught to do absolutely unique products, so we need just to put their brains to good use, and we don't want these people just to breed fish and sew clothing and make clothing, so that is why. So we need just to properly use their talent, because the state has invested a lot of money, and so we need just to take care of that. So we need just to put it to very good use. So this new idea of territories, accelerated development, I'd like to thank Rosatom, and so that they migrated it not only in Primorsky, so then the Far East, but in the territories of accelerated development. And I think that we need to understand. So we need to take advantage of these unique opportunities of these companies, these facilities that exist, and not regard them as a headache. And it's true that so those will be the new growth drivers. And by and large, I have to admit, we spoke about that earlier. I do not agree with this leveling when everyone is equal. For example, okay, industrial parks. So okay, let's do industrial parks. In every territory there is an industrial park, or the free economic zone. Let's get as many free economic zones as possible. So do we need to do that? Will it provide any profits? Is there any logic foundation? Will it be profitable? Yielded? We don't know anything. So for example, in Krasnoyarsk, so we have some Tomsk, so it makes sense. Obninsk, so one research laboratory. So it's logical to do it there. But in other areas, let's develop tourism or something else. Why do we have to? So they're twisting our arms, So let's make a high tech research something that from scratch. What's the point? So we need tourism there. And that's why we need to identify where it's really needed. So we need to do that. But when it's not needed, why should we spend money and effort on that? So what we do now? Exactly 1 year ago. Exactly. Today is January 14th. It's amazing. It's exactly a year ago as Mr. Medvedev, the Prime Minister, and so he signed mm, a government order. So development of the Tomsk program, Tomsk program, territorial center. So because we were discussing in Nakam now, Tatarstan, so this followed in their steps and considers the same program. And so the priority is the creation of state-of-the-art industrial effort, innovation clusters, and the Tomsk Innovative Zone. And so this is the third mechanism that's coming up. So we had industrial parks, we had economic zones, and now this is the third mechanism. And I hope that this is the third region, and certainly we benefit from the practice.
What
So, from the previous project, the Seversk territory of advanced development will complement those tools because the tools for the restricted areas would not match, would not be proper. So, for us, it will allow to address many issues and resolve many uh, problems. So without a Ministry of Economic Development and efficient use of those tools, we cannot succeed. We have to work in the same direction. And we cannot forget that this advanced development is the next stage of cooperation with Rosatom. As Dmitry said, Rosatom is the alma mater, the mother of all the universities and restricted areas. So it has to play a prominent role in that development. And the Seversk is the largest restricted area of Rosatom. And we were developing this project considering its specialization. So chemistry and technologies. This is our nuclear shield, and this company with 110,000 employees is located there, and those two cities have already merged, and we now are focusing on those two manufacturing facilities, on those two industries that create the industrial Siberian chemical industry. And we develop beryllium and nuclear materials development and non-nuclear materials. And these projects increase the competitive edge of the region and create the basis for further development. And other sectors of economics, primarily IT, vaccines, medications, machine building. That's what we intend to develop. So today we have 18 projects. Seversk zone will have 9 sites with total acreage of 100 hectare protected perimeter, and we turned the disadvantage into advantage. We transfer production facilities there that require protection and restriction access, and 2,000 hectares of available land is one of our competitive advantages. The second advantage will allow us to plan our activities and attract additional residents this year. So let me mention 3 projects out of 18 in our Seversk restricted area that will address the strategic import substitution and other items. For instance, polymer sorbents production used in uranium technologies, non-ferrous metals, nuclear stations. So this project is virtually ready at the construction stage. So the titanium dioxide on the basis of toroid technologies. In this country, we do not produce it at all. So today, we have the instruction of Ministry of Trade and Commerce, and then as a third project, beryllium production is another thing that we are going to start, because we do not produce beryllium in industrial quantities at all. So each of these 3 projects will really support our local industry. It's not just headaches that we are addressing. We are addressing strategic purposes. That's why we need systemic approach and support from the state. And there are many other important projects. For instance, a project that goes in line with the strategic priorities. So what I'm saying is not exactly our own project. These are the projects that have been coordinated primarily with Rosatom and the ministry. So we are not alone there. So this is the United Hex of Toroid of uranium processing, something that we never had in Russia in industrial scale. But we are trying to turn deficiencies into advantages. So today we cannot just remove the barbed wire, but we have plans with Rosatom. We have this agglomeration of the 2 cities that we are planning, but we have to be realistic. It will take minimum 10 years to many reasons. And so we were thinking about turning it into advantage. We are all restricted cities and areas with Rosatom, and virtually where Rosatom is present, we also have federal medical biological agencies, and it has several labs and companies there, and we met them, and we started a new collaboration activity. And so with the Federal Medical Biological Agency and St. Petersburg Vaccine and Serums, we launched the new pharma projects for producing heparin and other. So they will create. They will need this kind of protection perimeter. So to produce these vaccines, you need restricted areas. So this is exactly where they should be produced, those vaccines. And we also have the federal Tomsk territorial cluster, a medical and pharmaceutical and IT cluster in Tomsk. And last December, we started working with the Ministry of Industry to support this project and to substitute the imports in pharma industry. In Tomsk area, we have all the necessary scientific engineering competences to embark on pharmaceutical projects. And according to the preliminary estimation, we have the requirement of investment of 273 million rubles that you can see on the slide. Without the existing sites and the industrial facilities that exist, this number would double or triple. So this 273 million rubles is a very modest number. Economically, it's not peanuts, but we are going to invest 600 million from the local budget, then another 180 million, 150 million will be invested by private companies, and then the total amount will have a cumulative value of 31 billion rubles, and we create over 2,000 jobs. And it's not the Seversky restricted area. I think there are other projects and areas that could be addressed. We need to take certain steps to change instructions, to change the federal legislation. And the constituent units require coordination with the ministries and Rosatom. So what can we offer from our experience? Look, Severskaya restricted area is in municipal ownership. The industrial park and other sites with good infrastructure. And now we have also divestiture. Well, we are divesting from non-core assets as well. So we need to address the lands in the public property. Developing this restricted area, we need first to think about the land title, and then the transfer of land to the managing company, federal lands. So it requires federal legislation because these lands are now in Rosatom hands, and without the new law, they cannot do it. Simply cannot do it. And again, another proposal. So the industrial park, the restricted area, are located next to each other, virtually elbowing each other, and the lines between them are quite clear. But the industrial park will complement the tax benefits of the territories with advanced development. So after we have created those mechanisms and the third zone, we need to consider and look how they can complement each other. So they should not compete to each other, but what they need to do, they need to join efforts in working together. So we need to expand the restricted area boundaries beyond the existing zones. And I believe it goes for everyone because the situation is the same everywhere. And the third proposal, to ensure the efficient development, depends on the federal curator, federal supervisor. We suggest that Rosatom is empowered, would be granted the authority to decide to make all the decisions on the restricted area. This is a public state corporation. If the government decides to allow them, then Rosatom is clearly can monitor. That's why our request is to support. And the fourth, we need to coordinate activities of the Ministry of Economic Development, Trade, and the State Corporation in legislation initiatives. Last December, we came up with a proposal to set up a working group under the Ministry of Economic Development, and were supported by Alexander. I hope this group will be set up soon and start working to help us develop better. So we should not procrastinate here. And the fifth proposal is to in monacities and restricted areas we need to develop, and the success depends on the common marketing strategy. I believe it would be very good to join efforts in the regions and in the federal government to promote the sites and among the private companies and state investors. So coming back to square one, once we consider the restricted areas and the advanced development zones as a priority, we should do it together. This is not just, for someone to address, for federal or local authorities or Rosatom. These trinity, should work together. So I thank you, and I would like to invite you to comment. I thank you very much, Sergey Alexandrovich. I believe that your story has been very interesting, and the questions um, will allow the next speaker to think harder. And again, you spoke about the coordination of efforts, and also social and education ministries should get involved as well, because this process requires very important social aspects. Yeah, I would be happy to involve all the ministries because they can all chip in. I will relay your words to Dmitry Anatolievich. Again, speaking about the pharma cluster that can act as an additional driver, looking at the pharmaceutical industry globally, we know that the international rules are changing. And over the next 2 years, many national legislations will be altered in accordance to the new American partnerships. It means that we shall have new investors that will not comply, and they will require the sites that are loyal and open, mainly Asian investors. So it's not so much the restricted zones, but the new pharma that does not comply to the new rules. And we have 18 months to talk to them and get them involved. Dimitri, I can't help sharing. This topic is so interesting. When we started with tours and then went to pharma, and then we started building with Chinese partners several companies, several farms, mega farms, so for 100,000 cows, because to produce vaccines we need biological materials, and the Chinese were considering. So this atomic nuclear industry development helped us to start producing the vaccines. And when they learned that this biological material that they learned that we have something else, so they calculate very quickly. They immediately calculated the cost and decided to do it in Tomsk. Decided building because, remember the old joke. You have to check. Why do you need to look at this apple tree? If you want to get the apple, just shake it. Don't keep looking at it. So yes. So speaking about the investors who may turn up under the auspices of Ministry of Industry and Trade. So in February and March, we have a business mission and trade industrial dialogue with Japan, and we are now involving the regions to participate. It's going to take place in Tokyo to present on investment opportunities and industrial capacity of the region. As for the 5 questions, I would like to comment here. Speaking about the transfer management functions to Rosatom, we have already supported a similar request. As for stronger tools, so the whole system of industrial parks is the priority for industrial development of Russia. so is considered as a seed so in January we started receiving applications from industrial parks and clusters for compliance and check them for compliance according to the rules that the government uh, passed last year. So we do it on a daily basis, and we have all the projects for special economic zones and industrial parks. So we keep working. There's no issue here. Um, as for the transfer of the federal title and property, we need to consider it in more detail, and the expansion of the restricted zones tours and ZOs. So you're not losing your advantage in terms of the restricted perimeter. So we shall have a Q&A session. Please write down your questions. We shall definitely come back to them. I thank you, Sergey Alexandrovich and Angelika, and the way we're going to continue. I am going to break the agenda and pass the floor to Viktor Alexandrovich from the region that's located very close. Could you please tell us what you expect from this tool and what additional solutions and decisions that can be made in this area? I thank you, dear colleagues. Let me tell you that the advanced territories should be supported by all means, and we are going to do everything. I know Seversk very well, and Zheleznogorsk is another area that we're going to support. We have already invested over 1 billion rubles of budget to create all the power, utilities, and road infrastructure. Even we built the first building so that investors wouldn't have to build 10,000 square meters modern facilities to just come and start working. And we have also two anchor customers for innovatory products with the mining facility of Rosatom and big production area that produces over 70% of the satellite systems of Russia for defense and civil use with many new technologies. They always need new materials and components in huge quantities, and so the customers gravitate to this producer. So the government, the ministries should consider this project in the most comprehensive manner, because Russia today suffers consequences of the regional policies, wrong regional policies for the or absent, non-existent. There was no economic policy, no. We are talking about mono cities and the constituencies where there is no industry at all. So there is only budget sphere, some basic services, and that's it. There is no economics at all. So we cannot even talk about self-sufficient development. In each region, I believe in Tomsk, in Krasnoyarsk, there are large numbers of cities with 50,000 people, 100,000 people, where virtually there is no economics. They have no industry. Otherwise, we need to address that. Otherwise, there will be hell to pay. And I guess that Rosatom is promoting those territorial zones because they have huge facilities, power capacities, and talents and infrastructure in those mono cities that are absolutely unloaded, unused. This is the mission of the state, and a lot will depend on the quality of the new policies. Probably we were not very convincing in the economic zones, but we need to learn from our mistakes and we need to improve without much ado or without much red tape. We need to uh, help to boost these technical zones projects. I'm convinced that the tax benefits policy in some areas does not accelerate the investment process much. So the tax benefits is not the main development motivation for investment. We have no access to credit, to loans. The money is damn expensive, and we cannot. 10 years ago, we would, during the fat years, we would think that we would build a site and the investors will flock, but today we have to do it kind of, pick point them manually. We need to provide individual approach. We cannot afford just outflow of investment from some regions to the other. And again, we need to really have very somber estimation of the environment. The investor is going for the environment, scientific research, intellectual environment, talents, people. HR is a much higher stimulus than the tax benefits. We need to be very clear about it, and we need to include the new tools to boost the investments, and those tours, those regions will be an addition but not the basic motivation, and we should get no illusions about it. And the second thing that is very important, it is important to complement the policy by very accurate, precise state support policy. Yesterday I said that today the motivation of investment is very unfocused and consists of some politics rather than economic efficiency. So again, it boils down to some, political events. So some stimuli should work in a very precise and individual manner, including state subsidies and other motivation tools. Maybe some 5 years ago, I remember I was visiting the ministers and government with huge doubts. Why should we boost pharmaceutical industry in Moscow? In Moscow, we should not develop industry. This is detrimental, strategical. It's horrible. Why? Help create industries where in the places where we have the proper environment for that, not necessarily Moscow. And now we would have a totally different picture and territorial distribution, but it didn't happen. And another consideration, as governors, we cannot just be satisfied that we are the first, we are the leaders. It's too dangerous. The price is too high of the consequences. We need to focus on efficiency. Efficiency is now very difficult to obtain to accelerate the industrial investments. We can't just get the efficiency for the sake of efficiency. I think that Ministry of Economic Development knows better. If you look at the Kaluga budget, I believe they're in a very hard position, in a very difficult position. It used to be a leader in investment process and Ulyanovsk and everywhere, because there is no correlation at all whatsoever of the industry and the budget. It doesn't happen. And you need to understand that you have Sibur, I have Norilsk Nickel, but not innovation company. I get nothing from them. And the federal government is still kicking me to provide them with the regional benefits. No one wants to share the federal benefits. First, I can provide them even without the restricted zones on property tax and the profit tax benefits and the land tax benefits. I can do it without even the federal uh, level. If I start just distributing benefits, even the property tax, which does not seem, I will not get my budget. I won't have my budget. So yesterday we were discussing the domestic debt. So we have 2.5 trillions. How can you balance it?
And they're still pushing me. And so please give them benefits. So let's remove all the taxes. So because and then so if there are no taxes, how can we survive? So I love Rosatom, and at the same time I'm becoming apprehensive. So because if you really want to develop those territories, that's why you want to get some benefits because you want just less tax. That's it. Yes, because we're not developing. There is no revenue. There's no profit, and if they just take away all the taxes, how can they survive? And that is why we need to calculate and not just to go after this social politic fashion that's so much in vogue right now. And we need just to and the results of those industrial, so where the investment process has been burgeoning. So we need just to analyze it because it's one of the round table. I spoke about that because so why don't we exchange with the federal level? So let's exchange the VAT tax. So they calculate ruble to ruble, so and exchange VAT for the profit tax. And because the federal budget is suffering as much as regional budgets are suffering, but to motivate, so we can just exchange so VAT tax for revenues, so otherwise it will be impacted adversely. Because so if there is no in the best economic situation can be found in the industrial zones where there is no innovative economy, and so we need just to take it into account. And the last position I wanted to speak about is. So if there are no budget resources, if the budget resources are restricted, so then you can so by structural changes, so you can still accelerate, you can still new motivation, new incentives, so you can still develop if you do the structural changes. And against this background, so we need to try to increase the level of freedom of the regions, so that the regional empowerment to bring it up to different levels. So we need to expand the freedoms of the regions. You cannot motivate the economy from the federal center. The country is way too large, and the conditions are way too different. So that's why we need just to bring down those motivators, so these incentive points all the way down to the regional level, and then what the previous speaker spoke about, I echo that, I support that idea. And what so if we can decentralize the decision making process concerning the application of the instruments of innovative development should be done, and at all on all accounts. And so then the federal center should monitor, control, and coordinate, but it should not arrogate upon itself so the power of decision making all the time. This doesn't work that way. And they say, oh yeah, we have all the laws, so we can just give the land plots to the federal property to move and transfer them to municipal property, etc. It's allowed, but once you start doing it, years will have to pass by before it's done, and no investment project will be able to do that. I think that the techno parks and the special zones, I think it took us years. I remember at one of the state council, this says that the chairman of the innovative policy was saying, so in Novosibirsk academic city, so to place it, so they just felled the trees 3 months, but the first institutions were set up only 3 years later. So so at that time, so it took them 3 years to build a new city in the woods. Yeah, so but when we started to do the techno parks, it took us 3 years just to pass the plots of land to another type of property and ownership. But our regulatory framework and execution of the laws is done so even without sabotage, even without opposition. So it took us 3 years just to pass the land into a different type of property, a different type of ownership, even without opposition. And so can imagine that. And so, certainly we need to be optimistic, because even in difficult circumstances, we need to be heartened. But this process should not turn into yet another element of state support. And so we need to have this a regional policy needs to be developed of the Russian state, aimed at the acceleration of economic development, increasing efficiency, and accelerated development of the regions. That's what we are after. Yeah, so I understand that many proposals concerning taxes that you've made, so that's so difficult to implement. So then, because the fiscal burden will grow. No. For example, so we have profit. So let's exchange ruble to ruble. So I was a specific questions, and actually Lavrov this was there. So deputy minister, he was not against it. Look, so because we need to organize the tax policy, so without increasing the burden, so which the economy is weak. So to motivate the development, it's very easy. For example, if I kept the VAT, so then certainly the rates of development of my economy were much higher. So because it's a political, just not to allow our economy to plummet, because the regional GDP is positive at a point, but still positive, not negative. And I thought, oh, it's great, everything's up. But certainly if I got some of the VAT, so then I would be able just to increase. So then if the federal profit was the federal, so then the consolidated groups of tax and tolling schemes, so the largest monopolies, they would disappear immediately. They would disappear immediately. The tolling approaches, so the huge manufacturing facilities, and they're not paying anything, because everything just is within tolling regimen, and you cannot find who is going to pay. So they're not paying any taxes. Then other things being equal, so we would get a lot of profit. So if we start dealing with the shadow economy, for example, and so then 40% of the personal income tax, and for social personal tax. So we lose this money, yeah, because so this economy, the Soviet economy, does not exist, but the system is the same. So we need just to make the citizens to pay a certain percentage of the money they've made. Very simple, but we're not doing that, and that's why 40% of the personal income tax that we are not gathering.
Что это проблема регионов, но в то же время сегодня добавь Томской области даже 10-15% подоходного налога, она решит проблему дефицита. И я решу проблему дефицита, и мы прекратили бы, у нас не было бы этих сейчас 2 с лишним триллионов давящих долгов. Мы огромные деньги отдаем сегодня на обслуживание, вместо того, чтобы направлять их на стимулирование инвестиций. Извините.
Дмитрий, просто я вам посоветую, вы в наш условный клуб губернаторов как-то придите, послушайте то, что Виктор Александрович Наболевший говорит. Я могу еще на час продолжить, потому что мы, Томская область сегодня выплачивает в бюджет Российской Федерации больше, чем Алтайский край, Омская область и Кемеровская область вместе.
But Tomsky область more than all of them taken together. So that's what I'm saying. So then just let us keep let us keep at least a small fraction of what we are transferring to the federal budget. Just let us keep just a small fraction of what. So we're asking that. And so you just talk to us, because I'm very close to the subject, so because there are other mechanisms as well, but now we are considering those mechanisms of identification of growth drivers by way of development of accelerated territories. Yeah. So let me make a short comment. You see, territories are so important, so very important. Those territories are extremely pertinent. Uh, uh, so then I didn't want to comment on what the governor was saying, but I'd like to comment on what you said. I am ready to subscribe to every word you said. Whatever you said is correct. And that's exactly what I faced a year ago. So when about a year ago, I was appointed to this position, and I said, develop your regions. So are there any goals about the development of regions? No, no documents. So there is an old decree of the president about the regional policy, so developed 20 years ago. We don't have a comprehensive approach to development of territories. So the special economic zones didn't work because we don't know where to put them, because instead of creating sites and selling these products to investors, so it took us 10 years to build. So I was in Altai, and I visited these tourist special zones, notorious zones, and that were rightly criticized. Not a single resident there in 10 years. So 10 years passed because we had been building it for 10 years. We did not try to sell the product, but we had been building for 10 years. No tourists, no infrastructure, no nothing. Instead of attracting investments, and we don't want to become hostages of the same mistake. And no one came in 10 years. So we need just to promote those territories, and no investors that are lining up. And even the most successful sites, and now industrial special zones, Alaba, Galipis, and so people are not tripping over themselves just to come, and so because they're just running around the world, and they're asking, just please investors come. But we don't do that. But for whom have we been building all that? And then we need to raise another issue, which is on the surface. We need to talk about a certain reform in the area of interbudgetary relations. So we need just to increase. We need to motivate the municipalities, and we need to increase because they're not interested, but motivated to develop, because they have nothing left, because everything is taken from them. Okay, let's talk about other regions, because I think that there will be some proposals at the end of our panel. Over to Yuri Sergeyevich. Is he here? Rostov Oblast, Deputy Governor of Rostov. Rostovskaya Oblast, they are creating those territories. Gukova, right? Gukova. It's a mono city, it's a one industry city. What are the specifics and details? Colleagues, it's true that we hope that very soon our mono city Gukova will become one of the first territories of accelerated growth, advanced growth. So the documents have gone through all the levels, have been coordinated, formalized, and so we'll get the final document soon. And I'd like to support what Sergei Anatolyevich was saying, that the categories of monocities will be removed. That's good. There will be no categories because we have our own specifics. We have 3 monocities, and those are the minor territories. So the situation is very tough there. So like Gukova as an example, which is one of the territories now. Practically. So there are 4 industries in that city, and the number of miners. So the so then have gone down 5 times, so this situation is very difficult there, and certainly we did not expect. So then than the orders of the government. So we worked in those monocities, and the governor's position was to not to call those territories depressive territories, but we decided to refer to them as the territories of development, and that was the governor's position. Then both restricted areas and monocities and territories, so they need to be regarded from the viewpoint of their specifics and capitalize on the advantages that have been created by many generations. And and I'd like to talk about those accelerated territories. Certainly, they give a lot of advantages, and so we see this. There is certain synergy in there. So, with Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Trade and Industry, and technoparks, and we see that we can create a situation whereby now, in Gukovas, we have 20 potential investors who are considering this territory seriously. So this city is only 60,000 people, but we have 17,000 people who can actively work, and so they live in that territory, and then it's Sochi, Siberia, and we would like to have this so the people living in the city found work so that they could find work, and so that was the idea, and using these mechanisms, so the industrial parks and the territories. So we want us with for the next 10 years to create about 5,000 jobs. So we have localized 3 investment projects. So the first, probably the largest, so hot house investment, so huge investment, so 200,000 hectares of hot houses, and so which is very pertinent, so vis-a-vis import substitution effort, and will give a good impetus. So we have been scrutinizing this territory for a long period of time. But there are some infrastructure problems. So power supply is short. So then road infrastructure is not developed. And we understand what kind of production facilities will be localized, and so that hot houses, for example, effort is very power intensive industry, and that's why, owing to the fact that we started with a good head start with Gazprom, so on this investment program. So then 2016, so we got the statement of work from Gazprom, and Gazprom will help to increase the supply of natural gas and provide the necessary power to make this project feasible. I mean the hot houses, and so this federal law. So we need to create the regulatory framework that we are waiting eagerly for, and the Ministry of Economic Development, and we need to speed up the development, so the preparation of those documents. But we need just to formalize these documents, and I think that this resolution will be released soon, and the business plan form. The criteria of the evaluation of the business plan. So we are waiting for this resolution of the government, and we need just to act upon it quickly once it's ready. So we need these documents in place, and because the investors are ready to go, and waiting for the order to start, and they're coming to the sites already. Thank you. But we need that resolution. Thank you, Yuri Sergeyevich. Alexei Valerievich Sverdlovsk, your experience with the territories. So what are you planning to do, and what are you planning to develop there? What's your ideas? Because I know that you specialize, your territories will specialize in different areas. And in 2016, what are your plans concerning those territories? Thank you. allow me thank you to thank you for a chance to participate in discussion, because our region is very specific. We have 17 mono-cities, 4 restricted areas, and so 5 of them are category number 1. So what the previous speaker spoke about, I'd like to justify and support, and somewhere just to comment, because whether we need just to remove this first category cities. That's because we've been working for the development of tourism mono cities and territories jointly with Rosatom. We're working on that. So we have 5 mono cities of the first category, so one industry, so one Pervo-Uralsk destination, although it's the first category, but it's more or less, the station is more or less good, because it's only 100 kilometers from Ekaterinburg. It's a big city, and so then there is a pipe making a manufacturing facility there, and then Sverdlovsk, Krasnodvinsk, and Notoris, where we've been trying just to set up the industrial park since 2012, and failing. And then Kalpitsk, Volchansk, Uralsk, which are belong to the first category. And so we have started this work, and so then the applications have been submitted, and Krasnodvinsk. We jointly with the fund of the development of monocities, we started to implement the industrial park there, and so we wanted the Krasnoturinsk territory. Krasnoturinsk existed in the Soviet times. It was the administrative center or northern territory of Sverdlovsk region, and so it stayed the basics, the central, the pivotal city, administrative city, and so we decided just to keep it that way, and as an administrative city. And so Krasnoturinsk will be, and then other cities are just not far from it, so 15 to 40 kilometers away, and it would be logical to develop new manufacturing facilities and diversify our economy on the basis of Krasnoturinsk, because of its research, cultural, social potential, social infrastructure, all there. And then developing the territory in Krasnoturinsk and Pervouralsk, so will allow us to use the existing resources very efficiently, because we are just developing the industrial park in Krasnoturinsk industrial park. And then we are using other instruments of support provided by the Ministry of Trade, and so one of the residents was approved in the fund of the industry development for 500 million rubles. It's a very good project, and so now they're waiting for us to provide him with a site with infrastructure already. And so that's when we could improve the situation. All first category monocities. And so there is this to increase the level of well-being there in those cities, and improve the social economic situation, diversify the economy, and abandon so this dependence on only one industry, and then to get some more preferences, and just to get and then to move ourselves up to a new notion of what we refer to as the territory of accelerated development. Although I'm not sure that we need it. So then the territories that we're going just to develop in Krasnoturinsk is Bogoslovsky aluminum plant. It's there up and running, and then there is the alumina plant. And then so for timber, the energy, power, processing industry, production of so we built a road to Khanty and Sisk, and so the companies that manufacture concrete components, so they're getting orders, and so there's a big pipeline for orders, because there's a lot of production and construction going on in different areas, and so they understand the importance of logistics advantages, and so that is why so they're building roads, so they build a concrete making plant, and so the road is there, and that's why it's very easy to so to bring the products down that road to other areas. Then the main types of activities it's a pipe production. Then certainly energy, power, utilities, agriculture, production of food, so products made of wood, uh, uh, plaster, so then production of chemical components and elements, electrical equipment, electric motors, etc. And so then the minimum volume of capital investments is in Krasnoturinsk 5 million rubles and in Pervouralsk 20 million rubles. And so then creation of territorial areas. So we plan to build two in restricted areas jointly with Rosatom. And so this is restricted area Lesnoy, and actually we have lots of researchers there, and so that we have there so highly educated people, professionals, and so we need certainly to tap that. And people don't want to leave, and so they want to stay there and be involved in the research effort in that restricted area, and they're not leaving. So we have two sites, about 95 hectares, which is a restricted area, so which is inside the perimeter, which is protected, and outside. Certainly, we need to capitalize on so then production of electrotechnical equipment, new technologies, intellectual, smart gadgets, etc., new materials, technologies. And so then 10 residents, so they came out with their proposals to install their facilities on site with investment 1.9 billion rubles and the revenue 6.8 billion, and they will create 1,500 jobs. Then Novorajsk restricted area. So five sites, total area of almost 700 hectares, and so those so then so biomedical cluster that's developing very well in Novorajsk, and so we plan to manufacture so batteries, power supply sources, construction materials, intellectual gadgets, materials, biopharmaceutical, food products, and materials for additive technologies. And presently we have 26 applications for the residency. Investments amount to 20 billion rubles. The total revenue expected in excess of 32 billion rubles, and so more than 2,500 jobs will be created. So we so the minimum amount of investments capex for the implementation within the framework of Novorossiysk and Lesnoy, 15 million rubles, and on the and then no less than 10 million rubles for auxiliary types of activities that will be performed by a resident, and the basic and the core activity of the resident requires 15 million rubles minimum investment. So the Ministry of Economic Development will help us to make this final decision, but we are ready to go. All these projects are ready to start. Okay, well, I don't think that we need any more details, so we can always get your presentation. But are there any suggestions? And so then one. So unfortunately, so there is no federal authority authorized by the government that will be responsible for this, and the managing company that will perform the functions to manage the territory. So no management company yet, and then we need just to certainly to identify the sites that will be located inside the protected territory, so behind the barbed wire. And then so we need to find the managing company, and at the same time, so we need just certainly to make sure that the state secrecy will be maintained, and that So then in other regulatory framework, so concerning the passage of rights to third parties, etc. And there are some restrictions, constraints related to the special regime of the restricted area. It means security, and I'd like to appeal to the minister to speed up this process to help us to address these issues. And I agree with the previous speaker that we so the infrastructure is there, right? For example, and so there's people are not lining up. So we need just to travel far and wide to find investments and to convince them that this is the territory which is very good for the implementation of the projects that we're offering. So that's why we need to advertise and use all mechanisms and use the opportunities that are provided by the fund of the city's development and the Ministry of Trade efforts. We need to capitalize on that. So we need to use every instrument of support in order to promote the areas and the corporation of development of small medium businesses, because all the sites that we're preparing, so preparing them for small medium businesses, and then we need to use all these instruments on these sites, because the infrastructure is already there. No need to develop. Irina Viktorovna. So can you get down to business immediately? So talk about your proposals. Because the time is running out. At Chelyabinsk Oblast, we have 16 mono cities, 7 are first category, 4 restricted, 3 Rosatom. So we certainly go for it because mono cities and territorial cities. And then implementing comprehensive investment plans. This is very difficult to work with investors, and these new instruments gave a new impetus so that we could work better with our domestic investors and to interest them to develop our territories. That's why we unfortunately ran against a number of constraints and limitations. So, in restricted areas, so very difficult to attract the investors into the closed territory, so protected territory, restricted territory. Very difficult to do that. And then there is this, but we need just to act rather than talk about it, because investors are ready, but we need to entice them, we need to attract them, but they cannot start implementing their projects unless we create so these territories. So we need to create those territories, and they need to start registering their businesses and develop their businesses in those territories. So the main problem is it's a time frame problem, yeah. Because there was an order, an instruction to in February in 2015. So now, so a year passed, and FAIF has not been identified how to work with the restricted areas, and so that's why we appeal to the Ministry of Economic Development. So they got this instruction to address this issue. So how to quickly start how to put the regulatory framework in place, and but otherwise, so we have just a package of applications we submitted to the Ministry of Economic Development. All the restricted areas, they have their own specialization, and we develop. Yeah, we have developed the documents. So then Snezhinsk is the production for oil and gas equipment production. Ozersk, it's new materials and technologies. Then machine building in Trigorny. So we do have investors, 33 investment projects, so 2,700 new jobs. And so now we need not to lose the momentum that we have gained and not to lose the potential. And we need to fuel the interests of the investors to invest in the development of those territories. So the time factor is of the most important factor. Yeah, let's move over to the companies now, the third part. And so let's talk about the companies who are going just to develop those sites. Although and So this actually the institutional driver is certainly decides the companies at the federal level.
Karen Robertovich, could you please tell us what is now Rosatom doing for developing those uh, technical areas? And in the regions of your presence, what is there that you offer to do? Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me. And I have 3 slides. I'll try to be brief and explain our motivation uh, of participating in this project. And this proposal to allow to create advanced territories in restricted areas uh, did not happen by chance. For the last several years, with the local authorities, with ministries, with administrations, local administrations, we studied the situation in those restricted areas and did some pilots, looking for the formats that would allow to mm, pull the cities up. Uh, these are the high-tech industry clusters, and they have some development strategies to 2020, 2030. And it's obvious that the city environment should live up to the expected production and industry level. Since 2012, we have been developing comprehensive developing programs where we would follow the logic of connection of the city development and the industry strategy. And we accounted for the social infrastructure and utilities for each infrastructural and social project. We would pinpoint the investments that would make those projects alive, turn them alive. And if we had a project, then we would definitely consider the additional infrastructure and social facilities. So as we studied the existing support mechanisms, we discovered that one of the most efficient ways would be to create a special status of entrepreneurship in those advanced development territories, or TOR, TORs in Russian. So why those TORs? Why TORs? Because we have the HR resources there, the talent, and we are now upgrading the nuclear industry and raise efficiency. And people have very high qualifications and skills. And there are state procurement orders in some places, in some there are no orders, and in most projects there would be no success without special support. They are sitting in the drawer, and the state corporations does not have enough resources to launch them, and so we have sufficient areas that infrastructural facilities that would be wrong not to use. So definitely we cannot use all of them in those special areas, but some of them can be used. And last year we developed jointly with partners and colleagues 10 concepts for 10 cities, approximately 170 projects with which have different grades of completion, and the state corporation is going to invest 11,000 jobs, and they require low investment into infrastructure because the infrastructure is already there. So each TOR has its own direction and infrastructure, and we can, depending on the production specification, we expect that new jobs will be created, and in fact, we can carry out more projects and launch more projects for new products, enter new markets, and ensure import substitution with the industry on those sites. Let me show you our understanding of the way to move. Since 2016, we have a chance to create such advanced territories. We believe that the first residents should start working this year. They will not need investing. They will not need to invest capex within the the small operating expenses that they need to incur can be distributed over the next 3 years, so you don't have to pay all of them once. So, and we can expect the budget application in Q1, and some federal authority should be empowered to approve and create those advanced territories. So we should not lose momentum. We should keep going, and we shall do everything to support. We understand what legislation should be developed, and we have started doing so. It's very important to arrange the transfer of the land and the property. But it can take years, and therefore we request the Ministry of Economic Development to facilitate probably special regulation for the transfer of land and real estate in advanced zones. Maybe create a working group with the Ross property agency that would cater for exactly those advanced zones, and the financing sources. Though the money is not exorbitant, but you need them in order to bring the site to the proper condition and for the operation activity of the managing company. Now, we are creating the functional financial model to understand how many people they should have and what they are supposed to do. Probably the money, again, is not great, but they should be available. I would like to pass the floor to Dmitry Kobov from Sibur. I understand this is the company that started working in Tomsk, working on this Seversk advanced territory. You are now you're now having a large project in Tobolsk, and could you tell us about the specifics of your projects and why the company pays great attention to this advanced zone? Are there any additional requirements that we need to consider? Hello, I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, Dmitry, Director on Corporate Strategy of Sibur, and I'm going to tell you something different, because unlike Rosatom, we are a private company, and with social responsibility, we are a Russian company, and we work in the Russian environment, and we understand the risks and everything. So what I'm going to say is the position of a private company. Innovation and production and industry and private business is looking at advanced zones as an opportunity to set up long-term competitive production. So let me speak about two aspects of this, regional and federal. Yes, regionally and locally, we work a lot in this region, and I am very grateful to the authorities and the people who invited us. So since 2012, I'm a member of CBUR group on the economics, and one of the most important things that we mentioned there, that the most efficient economic development scenario in Russia provides not oil and gas but economic role of the local regions. The group of very prominent international experts says that one of the best development scenarios provides for the very high role of regional development. CBUR is the very investor and practitioner. Since 2008, we invested over 400,000 billion rubles into construction of industrial facilities, and we have achieved sustainable pace independently of the exchange rate and dollar tricks. And over the next 10 years, we intend to invest approximately $2 billion into the new constructions. So we are one of the leaders in Russia. And speaking about the investments that we make, we need to see that regions compete to each other. And working in Tomsk, we have a chemical facility, and Tomsk, even at the level Tomsk, in his presentation, there was brownfield and greenfield difference. So, but it bespeaks a very important thing. And Tomsk is a leader. It's again the same case as business. They are speaking. We are speaking the same language. Very often, I'm not going to digress, but the issue is that our partners in the regional and federal authorities do not always understand our language. For instance, take reconstruction and modernization in Tomsk that allowed us to increase our assortment and the range of products, and we actually even substituted for some import. We pushed them out from the Russian market when we started to produce those new things. Chemistry is not a golden mine. Our yield is from 8 to 16% of internal revenue. So many projects that we have 15% yield. And when we come to our regional partners, we say the project is 9 to 10. We cannot achieve 12, and they will not approve. And Tomsk modernization is the case when this little support, relatively little support, allowed to achieve the necessary things and launch a very large project, billions of rubles, and many jobs and new products. And this is the thing that we observe in Tomsk as well, because in the regions we have now many good new laws, but sometimes there are too many tools of support, and you can easily get confused. But Tomsk is focusing on the main things. Let's talk about the practices that work and new local instructions that allow us to create and support our central technological core. It's we develop the new technologies, the films, again, films production and polyethylene films, and the region becomes stronger and business gets consolidated. And business is always interested in benefits, but now they are not the driver, the main driver. It's the environment that's the driver, which is even more important than any types of direct benefits. If there is no environment, the capital will flee. Of course, there is competition for money, but if they compete, but any governor compete to Chinese provinces, we need to understand that we are very pragmatic and we can choose between Krasnoyarsk, Tomsk, and the Chinese. And this is the main, game, rules of the game that the regions have to face. And that is very important at the regional level. And the dynamics, the process that we have in Tomsk, we are not ideal. Probably we move slower than we would like to. But at least we see the clear trend, the way to address issues to achieve results. And the efficiency is not how many technoparks or instructions we have made. The final criterion of the economic efficiency is investment, money, taxes. And that should be the short list of things that drive our business and life. And we are standing aside from another problem. We understand there are capacities that generate tax proceeds. Yes, indeed. In our investment program, we understand that we shall have a break-even point in 10 years. This 1 billion rubles is related to the budget of the region. And when we come back in a year or two, we shall hear that you are great people, but my motivation is not very high because I need to have my budget. And that's the issue that Victor and Alexander spoke about. If we don't solve it, so the governor have to do with what they have, and they don't have much. So the more authority, the more we empower them. The governors and the regions, the local authorities will see the growth. And we were talking about the percentage for the regional for GDP, and without it, we shall be very slow. And again, if I meet our state authorities, in the corridor, and in passing, they would ask me, tell me 3 things that we need to do. First, what we need to do. That's always a marathon. This is the same topic. We already spoke about it. We cannot expect quick results. There are no quick wins. Let me tell you, Singapore that that created one of the most powerful oil and chemical cluster took 40 years. And after the first phase, when they created this refinery, the first refinery, finally they created this Jurong cluster. And at that moment, the chemistry share in Singapore was 15%. In 20 years, it came to 45. But again, it's like bamboo shoots, they took 10 years just to sprout, and then they boomed. So speaking about the production innovations, again, it seems obvious, the writing is on the wall, but you need to understand this is always a marathon. Speaking about serious industry, it's not cheese, that you can produce in 3 months, but these are long cycles. So first is design, then the first try of the system, then production, then commissioning. In a large project, the commissioning may take months or years. Then simultaneously, we train people. We need to understand that people, engineers, technicians, constructors, workers cannot just appear overnight. And you have to shrink or overlap those cycles. So speaking about the achievements in the car industry or in other industry, it's 7, 8, 10 years that requires to jump from 15 to 40% or 50%. And my colleagues in the ministry, everyone needs to understand it's minimum 10 years. You cannot innovate overnight. It cannot happen in a year's time. For instance, take Brazil, deep drilling. So from the moment they invested first large money to industrial drilling, it took 16 years, and they consider it quite fast. So it's always a marathon, many years to take, and there's always a political factor, and there are things that cannot radically be squeezed, be shrunk, and we need to understand it. We understand that the cycle of our big construction, like in Tobolsk, it took us 4 years just to design, to develop, and we made decision last year. And in 2020 only, it's going to be commissioned. So it's 10 years. Please understand, this is a minimum. Even 2 governors' terms, but that's what we have to face. 2 governors may change, before we launch the production. So I will not take too much of your time, but that's the most important thing you need to realize, and always keep that in mind on this macro level. These are very complicated, convoluted things. It cannot be done quick. You cannot expect quick wins and immediate results. Skolkovo. Skolkovo is not bad, but again, it takes time. Thank you for your attention, and I thank Sergei Anatolievich separately for invitation and the opportunity to speak. Thank you. If you have a very important comment that you would like, to come up with, yeah, Alexei, because we're running out of time. Yeah, just in a very concise manner. So yesterday we heard a lot about the oil prices, and as I did in Sarov, I did a lot. So the good news is that finally our labor cost has become realistic on the global market. Now it is close to the Chinese and the Indian market. We overheated our salaries. So one of the vectors is the foreign economics. So the products and services that we export will have very good margin and starting points because of the decreased cost of our labor. So the last, thank you. I would like to mention a very important advantage of the advanced zones that has been omitted. So there are bottlenecks in the economic zones, and that is social infrastructure. And the economic zones of Rosatom are very developed areas with good infrastructure, schools, kindergartens. So the investor does not have to take care of infrastructure. So there are production facilities, there is power supply, and Zarechne restricted area, we have one of the anchor residents who is ready to start producing machine tools with a Mid-Volga machine plant 2 months after the decision is made to create an advanced development area. So there are many questions from the room. Are you ready? But probably the questions should be asked privately. No. You understand where our time is out. I expect at least 20 people want to ask question, but Sergei Anatolievich, we need to allow more time at the forums because the topic that you raise requires much more time. So let us draw the line. 3 important comments that we have to make. 3 important items. So we have a legacy of problems, and those tours, the advanced zones, have highlighted that we need to address them. Land, budgets, new tools. New tools will always be skidding unless we address the legacy issues. So we always have to raise them and escalate to the level of the federation to be able to address them. So the second is new paradigm and low oil prices and non-energy sources of income. Global architecture of trade is changing. Investment market is fluctuating, and the new role of macroeconomic new macroeconomic role of the region that has to be there. This is the agenda that we have to consider. And the budget relations require a special look, we need to consider them from a different angle. Then the third item is institutional entities that caters for restrictions like budget restrictions and fiscal load, fiscal burden. And I heard from all the participants that it's not the tax that driving the growth, but the environment and other conditions. But I can also reply back that the regions are expecting from you the requirements, the explanation, what architecture, what environment you expect to get. You cannot just say that it should be good. That's not sufficient. You have to elaborate. You have to elucidate what you expect from the regions. And this is kind of fine-tuning of your collaboration with investors, where you have to, to handle each item manually to bring it to the regional decision level. So I suggest we wrap up our roundtable discussion. We thank all the participants, all the attendees, and remind that we have this so-called old style new year that the foreigners cannot understand, but still I want to congratulate it, though it has to do with the Julian and Gregorian calendar. There are two types of calendar, and that's why we celebrate the old style new year. Thank you very much, and see you again.